On this episode of the Carolina Sports Guy, we're going to be looking at the 5 coaches who've coached the Carolina Hurricanes so far in their 20-plus year history. Before we get into today's video, please make sure you subscribe. It doesn't cost anything. Pound that like button. Do a brother a favor. Uncle Chucky would appreciate it. And make sure you hit that bell notification so you can be notified of future content on this channel, whether it be Carolina Hurricanes, Carolina Panthers, Charlotte Hornets, or major college sports in the Carolinas. Leave some comments as well, as I'd like to know what other things you'd like to see on these videos, or if you have any discrepancies with what we're talking about in the sports in the Carolinas. All right, folks, kind of getting into the slow season, and I know it's the Carolina Hurricanes, you know, with the expansion draft coming up with Seattle, it's going to be a big deal what player we lose on the edge of our seat. I personally hope it's not Jake Bean, and I don't want to lose some other guys, and we got to concentrate on free agency with Jordan Martinick, and Svechnikov is a restricted free agent, and we got guys like Morgan Geekie, and Brock McGinn's unrestricted, and of course Dougie Hamilton. And what about Coach Brind'amour? And that's why we're here talking about this today. But I thought before we got started into the expansion draft or free agency, where we'd stand this summer, who we're going to bring up along the young players, we just kind of look at these coaches. And with the 5 coaches we've had, I'd like to basically say we've got 2 on the thumbs down side, and 1 might not be fair. I don't think he really had a long opportunity, but I think the 2 years he coached for us, we'll get into it, he didn't really offer much. I don't think he was quite a head coach material. 1 we're going to kind of put on the fence, probably had the worst winning percentage of all 5 at one point, but he was a coach who coached 2 stints with the Hurricanes. We'll get into him as well. And he did have a little bit of playoff success getting us to a Stanley Cup. Then we have the other 2. And, you know, which direction are you going? Are you going to choose a guy who's had 3 winning seasons and got us to a conference finals once? Or are you going to choose us to a guy who only had 1 winning season but won it all? So that's the discrepancy we're going to have looking at the Carolina Hurricanes coaches. All right, I kind of want to deal with the ugly first. And the ugly is going to be Bill Peters. Bill Peters coached the Carolina Hurricanes from 2014 to 2018. And he was a 4th overall head coach of the Carolina Hurricanes. I think you can look at Bill Peters' demeanor, and I don't think he was player-friendly. He coached 328 games for the Hurricanes, had 137 wins, 138 losses, and 53 games where we'd go to overtime and get a point, but it was kind of an overtime loss. So he had a .498 winning percentage, but no playoff appearances in those 4 years. And the best he could muster in 4 years, 87 points. That's just not going to cut it. Especially if we go back to the Metro Division. If you're not in the mid-90s, I mean, low 90s on a bad year might get you the 4th seed in. But if you're not hitting around the mid-90s, you kiss your butt goodbye, you're not getting in. And you really need to be in the high 90s to 100 points at least to kind of have any success to build home playoff, like first round, maybe second. And that's the best he could muster. You know, and then Bill Peters ends up going to Calgary. We do a trade with them. You know, we send them Lindholm and Noah Hanifan. Bill Peters had some things he said he shouldn't have done. Kind of got him fired. And now I believe he's coaching in Russia in the KHL. Just personality, demeanor did not fit well with the Hurricanes. And I think we actually stepped back as having him as a head coach. Next would be Kirk Muller. Now, Kirk Muller only coached, he coached 2011 and 2014. And I wouldn't say he was the 3rd overall coach we had. He only coached 2 years and change. We got into the 3rd year with him, and it looked ugly early, and we replaced him with Bill Peters. But he coached 187 games for the Hurricanes, so he didn't get the amount of time Bill Peters got. He had 80 wins and 80 losses with 27 overtime losses. So that more or less is a 500 record. Okay. Now, he did get the Carolina Hurricanes to 3rd place in the old Southeast Division before we joined the Metro in 2012-2013. But no playoffs, just like Bill Peters. And 83 points is the most he could produce And that was good. And you know, like I said, Southeast Division, 83 points might get you second place. Like I said, this one time it got him third. But you're not going anywhere in the playoffs if that's the best you can do. And I don't think Kirk Muller was given enough time. But at the same time, I think the Hurricanes realized Kirk Muller was not head coaching material. Now we're going to get down to the guys who definitely made a difference, the three head coaches for the Carolina Hurricanes that had some semblance of success. The guy we got on the list here is Paul Maurice. He was the original coach for the Carolina Hurricanes in 1997. Of course, he coached a couple years for the Hartford Whalers, and he lasted into 2003. Then he did a second stint from 2008 to 2011. Now, if you look at his overall game, he coached 768 games for the Canes, 323 wins, 319 losses, 126 ties, or like I said, overtime losses where he pick up a point. So the first time around, his winning percentage by far was the worst. It was a 486. But the second stint where he stuck around for 3 years, he had a 533 winning percentage. So if you average the two together, it's like 519 winning percentage, but you kind of have to lower it from there because his first stint, he was here like 6 years and only 3 years the second stint. So when you balance that out, 519 winning percentage is probably down to about 508. Still better than Peters, still better than Muller, but some of the worst teams we had were under Paul Maurice. Now, he did win the Southeast Division title in 1988-1999 in his second year. In 2000-2001, we finished second in the Southeast, but we made the playoffs. 2001-2002, we won the Southeast Division title. And in that year, 2001-2002, following up where we played the year before, we got Ron Francis playing with us. And I believe this is about the period of time where we get Rod Brind'amour as a player. And we ended up getting the playoffs. We did some damage. I know we beat Montreal in the playoffs. I want to say we beat Toronto in the playoffs. And we ended up going up against Detroit in the Stanley Cup. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we get game one in Detroit. Francis scores a goal. We win game one and stun Detroit. But then Detroit wins 4 in a row. It was either that or Detroit won 1 and we matched them at 1-1, and then they went on to win 3 more. I was at that game number 4 where Detroit's winning 2-1, I believe. And it might have been game 3. Having a hard time remembering. But it ended up being the third longest game in Stanley Cup playoff history. 3 overtimes when we lost to Detroit. Several chances to win. But we did, like I said, Paul Maurice got us to the Stanley Cup in 2001-2002, where we were defeated. Now, we go start looking, he gets fired. We decide to bring him back after having to deal with issues of having a coach that didn't pan out again. We bring Paul Maurice back for a second stint. And you'd think, man, retreaded tires. Maurice had proven that he really wasn't the coach we needed. But like I said, he came back through these 3 years, 2008. And in 2008-2009, his first year back for the Hurricanes, he gets us all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals. I mean, we finished second in the Southeast Division, but we get in the playoffs, make some noise. I believe we upset, let me see, who did we upset? We upset Boston. Yes. Boston had been a playoff thorn in our side. And we beat Boston and win that series and quieted a Boston Garden crowd. And we ended up going on and playing Pittsburgh in the Eastern Conference Final. Unfortunately for that, Pittsburgh swept us 4-0. Of course, Sidney Crosby and gang, they kind of took it to us. But Paul Maurice in his time did have 4 playoff appearances, which is 4 more than Kurt Muller and 4 more than Bill Peters. And he did have 2 Southeast Division titles, which, like I said, Peters and Muller, no playoff appearance. And he got us to the 1 Stanley Cup. So I kind of got to put him in the middle here because his longevity, getting to a Stanley Cup, is something that one of our last 2 coaches hasn't done. Now, this is where you start looking at who we have at the head coach and which one you rank as better. Brind'amour. Now, I mentioned him first, and there's a reason. If you really look at the best coach we've probably ever had, for these 3 seasons under Brind'amour, 2018 to 2019, 2019, 2020, and then this year, 2020, 2021, 3 seasons with Brind'amour. We've made the playoffs all 3 seasons. Now, 2018 to 19, we squeak in, get the 4th seed in the tough Metropolitan Division, but we said we did some damage, folks. We upset Washington in 7 games in the first round, and then we go in, I think we were the 7th seed, Washington was 2. Then we go in and we beat the Islanders, swept them. And then we end up having to play Boston, and of course they beat us 4 games to none. We come back the next year, and that was the COVID year. We finished 4th in the South in the Metro Division, and I think if we'd have played out the full season, we were gaining steam. And I don't think we would have been the 4th seed in the Southeast. I think we were in position, even if we'd have played just a couple more games in the season before COVID hit, we probably would have had the 3rd spot in the in the Metropolitan Division, and we would have moved up a little bit higher. But we played the Rangers in the playing round and beat them. I think we swept them, as a matter of fact. And then we lost to Boston again, 4 games to 1. This year, what do? We're put in the Central Division with some good teams like Dallas and Columbus and Nashville and Florida, Detroit, Chicago, but Tampa Bay. And we win the Central Division title. Fortunately, we beat Nashville in the first round, but run into a buzzsaw in Tampa, lose 4 games to 1. Series, I think, is closer than the 4-1 shows. A couple of 1-loss games, and game we had a pretty good lead in the 4th game of the series and kind of blew it up in the end of the 2nd and 3rd period. But Brind'amour, 206 games coached for the Hurricanes, 120 wins, 66 losses, 20 overtime losses. So he's had 2 4th place Metropolitan Division finishes, 1 Central Division title, all 3 years in the playoffs, and he's got us to the 1 conference final on his resume. Now, here's the thing about Brind'amour that's important. If he ends up not re-signing with the Hurricanes, and let's say he takes the Rangers job because they about got money, screw the Rangers, I hate your guts. If the only team I can see worse coaching for somebody is Boston. Can't stand the Rangers, or Washington for that matter. If he's ever coached for them, I've lost all kinds of respect. And I understand money can be a factor. Seattle's scary because, yes, Brind'amour is from that upper northwest area from British Columbia. Could be somewhere he'd want to go. But I believe if the money's right and Tom Dundon does the right thing, we bring Brind'amour back, at least for 3 more years. We've got, before we sign any free agents, whether they be restricted or unrestricted, we've got to take care of Brind'amour. Because if he leaves now, it's kind of hard to put him number 1. Because longevity, just 3 years, although they've been 3 successful years. If he comes back and continues the pace where we're making the playoffs next year and the year after, and we get to another conference final, or actually get to the Stanley Cup, or if Brind'amour can bring us another Stanley Cup, hey, all he's got to do is get us to 1 more Stanley Cup. That's all he's got to do. And if he wins it, he will go down as the greatest coach we have based on what he's done so far. But it's kind of hard to put him number 1. Just the best thing you can say, he's got 3 straight playoff appearances. Got to have a Stanley Cup. At least get to the Stanley Cup. So therefore, number 1, we look at Peter Laviolette. A lot of people are going to disagree with me. 2003, 2008, he had a .570 win percentage, which is just behind Brind'amour's .600 winning percentage. 323 games coached for the Hurricanes, 167 wins, 122 losses, 34 overtime losses, like ties, points. He only made the playoffs, though, 1 in 5 years. That's what killed him. Now, he had to come in and build, and he did. Of course, they also had a strike season where we didn't have a season. But he came in that year, 2005, 2006, 112 points overall. Best we've ever done as a franchise. gets us, in the playoffs. I know I try to remember who we beat in the first round. That might have been New Jersey, but I know the second round, I believe we played Buffalo and beat Buffalo, or we beat them in the third round. But then we ended up playing Edmonton, beat them in 7 games. Now, Brind'amour was a player on that team, but Laviolette was very instrumental in coaching that team to their 1 Stanley Cup. It's hard to take him because he's got you your championship. Although you look at his other 4 years, they weren't good. So for me, in my opinion, for Brind'amour to overtake Laviolette, he has to definitely come back and coach. Okay? That's number 1. Number 2, if he just gets us to a Stanley Cup, I think he can knock Laviolette off. But like I said, if Brind'amour can come back and coach, whether it's for 1, 2, 3, 5 seasons for the Hurricanes, and gets us to the Stanley Cup and we win, hands down, best coach in Carolina Hurricanes history. Okay, folks, what do you think of today's content? Let me know in some comments that what you think, which one you'd rank high, which one you wouldn't place, where I did. Pound that like button. Hit the bell notification to be notified of future content like this. Subscribe, folks. It doesn't cost anything. I will see you next time on another episode of the Carolina Sports Guy.